nice to be with you all. I am joined today by none other than Antony Slumbers, who is an incredible thought leader in the space of smart as a service or real estate as a service. With the $1 million hashtag, I'll let him introduce himself in a minute. And his career has really started to move more and more into AI. And he's been launching an incredible course on AI, which we're going to talk about today. But yeah, let's start with you, Antony. Why don't we start with giving you an intro into who you are and why we're here today.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Nicholas. Well, I'll give the too long did not read answer. Otherwise, it goes on for ages. But in a nutshell, I ran a web agency for about 10 years. This is going back to the last century. And we developed websites and intranets, as they were called then, for lots of real estate companies. And then I spent about 20 years essentially writing property management software as part of a joint venture with British Land, a product called Vicinity. And we wrote visitor management systems, permit systems, help desk, and all that sort of stuff. Over the last 10 years, though, I have mainly been doing advisory work. I do a lot of speaking all around the world, and I do a lot of writing. And over the last 4 years, I've been running various online courses. The current one of which has been running for 18 months or so, is generative AI for real estate people. But the AI side's quite interesting because I actually did a presentation way back in 2017 at the Future PropTech conference, saying that there was large areas of the real estate that are an absolute bullseye for AI. And of course, that was a little bit too early. So 2017, not a lot happened between then and then the launch of generative AI in 2022. And it's all gone crazy since then. So that's 30 odd years in a very short nutshell.
And where we came into your content from the beginning, we launched the Smart Building Certification in 2020, and it's right when COVID hit, which was a crazy time to launch a certification, but a blessing in a disguise in some ways because we created a digital first program out of it. But what we got out of COVID was your own podcast or your own discussions online about real estate as a service. And those podcasts, I don't even know if you know that, but it really was so formative for, so many of the tech sector trying to think about how do we apply value to real estate using technology and how do we actually change real estate to be more of a service rather than just bricks and hope that somebody's going to actually use this property. But let's start there first. Where are we in the real estate as a service discussion? Do you see it changing? Do you see it happening? Do you see your predictions actually taking shape now?
Well, it's quite funny. You might have noticed I don't talk about that so much anymore. I've actually been going on about space as a service, hashtag space as a service, which is my famous $1 trillion hashtag, since I looked it up the other day, and I think it was 2013 or something like that I started going on about it. And my whole idea about space as a service was not so much about whether the procurement, whether you do a lease or you do short-term rentals, but much more was this fundamental thing of needing spaces that had the products and services we needed for whatever we wanted to do to enable us to be as productive as we could be. So much more interactive spaces, much more human-centric spaces, much more spaces that are concerned about how do we enable people to be happy, healthy, and productive. And essentially, I thought that was all going that way anyway. And it was going all that way anyway. And of course, COVID, though, of course, gave it the most massive sort of kick up the backside. And frankly, I think that battle, if you like, is completely won now. There's a famous comment from Jones Lang that 30% of the office market will be space as a service by 2030. And I actually think that's wrong. I think it's practically 100% now. So you're either in some sort of flexible space, or you're in an office that is essentially being run as if it was a space as a service space. So I think we've completely won the battle, if you like, that buildings and offices today are, if you want to generate good income out of them and good investment value out of them, you actually have to put the customer of that building first, as opposed to the historic real estate thing of the customer of that building was an investor. So traditionally, you built an office building and you didn't really care who had it, as long as someone signed a lease and it had a good covenant, and you were selling an investment to someone. But now it's completely opposite. If you don't have a great building, I mean, it's so interesting just looking around now, isn't it? You see in the major cities, there's actually record rents being achieved because there's a very small number of really good buildings. There's a very small number of really smart and good buildings, and there is, at the top end of the market, there's a lot of people who absolutely want and have to have these types of really first class buildings. So at the top of the market, we've got a shortage of supply and premium rents, and that's going to go on because now we've got the problem that building costs are so high, it's really difficult to actually build a building. So there's going to be continued shortage at the top. And then you've got a very strong, certainly in London, a very strong flex market in one way or another. And both of those areas are doing very well and will continue to expand. And then you've got a great gap in the middle of not very good buildings, not really operated very well, and as everybody knows, but they don't really want to say, are actually going to have to be repurposed or repositioned or demolished or something like that. So we've got this market, which I'd always sort of anticipated, that it used to be that everyone went up and down in real estate at the same time. We were either all geniuses and making money and aren't we clever, look at us, or we were all idiots. And it just was a function of the cycle. But now you've got, I mean, it's not the greatest market in the world, but as I say, you've got a shortage of the spaces that people actually want now. And we're now at the situation that nobody needs an office. Doesn't mean they don't want one, but they don't need it because we've proved that you can work wherever. So the industry has to produce buildings that people want, and I think we're there. So that's a battle won, I think.
I absolutely love that you coin it that way, that it's a battle won, and I couldn't agree more. I think you're absolutely right, and there's different ways to differentiate your property, and we from the Smart Building Collective and the Smart Building Certification have always thought that digitization and smart was one of those ways of doing it, and it was we kind of coined the ROI, or the value of smart, into three buckets, right? It's efficiency gain of different ways to manage your property through different facility management tactics or different process, these types of things. It's human health and performance, which you were just alluding to, of getting assets to be more attractive to individuals through good air quality and sound quality and light and these types of things. And it's about sustainability, right? And that was something that came on to the certification later, but it was all about ESG and now EU taxonomy and all the regulations that go with it. So how do you see, because I completely agree that the battle is won in a way of real estate being used differently, but how well are we doing from a digitization perspective in that? And of course, garbage in, garbage out from a data perspective, and we're about to start to speak about AI, so that's completely important. But how do you see the digitization piece of that puzzle going? Battle one?
But battle one in places. I mean, we certainly now there are a lot of good buildings out there. I mean, there's not enough, but there are a lot of good buildings. This is sort of a known now. We know how to build a technically really good, smart building. And So I think in many ways the foundations are in place in the right buildings for now being able to layer on top all these other qualitative user centric, human centric um, experiences. But there's an interesting thing here. I know if you ask people in the prop tech industry, they often say, it's still a real struggle getting our technology into these buildings. And I've thought for many years now, don't worry, it's coming, because we will get to a stage where you cannot have a building perform in the way you want it to unless it's supported by that technology. So whether you like it or not, your building needs this technology, because it's that technology that enables all of this other stuff. And so I think I think there's an opportunity and threat here. As I said before, in my mind, there's a huge number of buildings that are completely obsolete and are no longer fit for market. They don't have product market fit anymore. But there's a massive opportunity, and several people are taking it, of having really great buildings where people love to come. And they're going to be sticky, and they're going to be the places people want to come. Well, I mean, we'll talk about it probably in a moment, but I have visions of buildings that become increasingly sticky because they become increasingly smart and cognizant when we start layering on AI services into a building. I see a building within a number of years of becoming like an ambient computer. The building understands us, understands what we need, and adapts itself for whatever we need. And that's all going to be built into the technology of the building. And you're going to get these. You're more and more going to get these buildings where I want to be in that building. We want to be in that building, or we want to be in a building by that developer. And so we've talked for many years about branding in real estate, and it used to be thought you can't really brand real estate. It's is it a BCO spec building or not, and that's about it. But no, this is a branding exercise now. And in the same way as there's hotel chains that one goes to, there's going to be office chains in some form or some form or other, or it might even just be the operator. That the operator becomes the for all the flack WeWork got, and yes, they did do a lot of things wrong, and there was far too much hubris and whatever. But they created a brand that people really loved. I mean, they did it all financially wrong, but they did create a product that lots of people wanted. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. But no one is going to be able to do it unless you've got that technological underpinning to layer these things on top of. Because all of this stuff, the trouble with technology is it goes from magic to table stakes really quickly. So for a very short time, and it's going to happen. The same's going to happen with AI. There's so much of it. You look now and you just sort of smile and you think, "Oh my God, that's magic." And in no time at all, you just think, "Well, yes, that's just what happens." I can talk to my phone now, and someone will answer me back. Or I remember a number of years ago, my son was in the car and he was moaning because his the video that he was trying to stream through his device wasn't working. And I was just laughing, thinking, when I was your age, the mere thought of being able to stream a video when you're in a car driving up a road is just ridiculous. And now it's like, meh.
Yeah.
So we're so much heading into, and we're already there into this world where you've got to be so deeply human plus machine. You need to be really, really good on the technological side, but even then, that's necessary but not sufficient, because you need to be actually, frankly, a really good human. You need to be a really good human to understand what it is that my customers want. How am I going to give it to them? And can I continue giving it to them?
And I love that as the differentiator when it comes to AI, that the human piece remains important in this discussion. And we've always said when it comes to smart, and this is not necessarily AI, but thinking about data and technology within buildings, it's not only about the tech, it's about what you do with it, that it actually makes the difference between making it useful or actually more of a burden or more of a cost. When you look at being AI ready, what, I just kind of thinking about it, in goal first, moving backwards for us, what do you think needs to be in place for a building in order to be ready for um, that new world, I would say?
Uh, Fundamentally, I think the data requirements fit into three buckets. So we need to understand how is this building performing physically as a building? How is it performing? All the stuff, as you said, heating, light, noise, environmental conditions, CO2 levels, all that stuff. How is it actually performing in engineering terms as a physical building? So we need to know that. Then we need to know, how are people using our building? Where are people going? Where are they loitering? Where are they not going? When are they going there? Are they going there at different times of day? Different? Does the weather affect it? You need to understand your utilization at a very granular level. But then there's a layer on top of that, which I think, which I've always said is the really hard one, but I think it might be the one that AI starts to enable us to do, and that is understanding what it is people are actually doing. So I'm in that space, but what am I doing? What is Nicholas in this building to do today? So is he here to write a report? Is he here to meet people? Is he here to get educated? Is he here to educate? Is he here for a social reason? Is he here for what? Because if I can understand what it is, why Nicholas is in this building on a longer term basis, I've got the best opportunity of working out, well, what spaces do I need to provide that are perfect for whatever, this is the ultimate space as a service. So Nicholas is in this building to do four things during the day. I want him to do those four things in four different spaces. And each of those spaces is optimized for that particular task. But I really need to know what people are actually doing in the building to have an understanding enough about, well, in that case, what types of amenity, what types of facilities, what types of tech, what types of blah, blah, blah are needed. And that's the stuff we might start seeing AI enabling. If we have enough sensors in a building, sensing things, and we have a strong enough brand that the people in that building do not mind us collecting all this information. And this is going to be a problem. There's some companies that you're willing to give your information to, and others you don't want to give anything to. It's like I don't want to give any information to Facebook at all, whatever they say. And then there's other companies that I'm perfectly happy. If Marks and Spencer's over here want my information, I don't care, because I've got a pretty good idea why they want it, and why they want it is probably to provide me with a better service. So you do need this compact, this social contract, if you like, for we are going to collect all this data about you personally, but we're going to use it in a responsible manner, and we're going to use it in a way that enables us to get this building to perform as perfectly for your requirements as possible. And if you can do that, then you will probably start accumulating a vast amount of knowledge. Because if I really don't care, if you track me around the building and you track everything I do, if I don't care, then you are going to know so much about me, but it's actually not me. It'll be cohorts of people like me. In reality, no one's interested in the individual. I mean, it's like the thing people say about, oh, well, Facebook make money out of me, they should pay me. Facebook don't care about you. They've got 2 billion views. You are just a part of a cohort. So you don't need individual, or mostly you don't need individual information. You need types of people like Nicholas and types of people like Anthony, what do they need? And we're much more likely to start getting that. Not least of all because a lot of the things we're going to be doing in buildings in the next few years are going to be about learning and education and socializing. That's a lot of reasons people are going to come into building, and networking. I wrote a long blog post a few months ago called, well, actually, the end of last year, called "Real Estate as Maven," and the idea was you have a large building, and it's multi-tenanted. Nicholas works for one company on the 16th floor. Anthony works for another company on the 4th floor. Somehow, this building knows that Nicholas really needs to meet Anthony, and Anthony really needs to meet Nicholas because they're working on similar things, or they're in adjacent industries, but they're working on similar things, and it'd be great to get them together. So what sort of event programming or what social programming could I provide that enables them to get together? So part of the value of the building is that I come to this building and I leave this building better networked than when I arrive. Yeah. And that's, I mean, that's not couldn't be an easy thing to do, but that's what it's like going to a really great conference as opposed to an ordinary conference. You go to a really great conference and you meet the 10 people you really should have met, and that's got enormous value for me. When I come to a building, I need to learn something. Why am I there? I either need to learn with my own people, my own team, or my own company, or I need to learn from other people in the building, or I need to learn from external people coming. Otherwise, what am I there? If I'm there to sit in front of my computer all day or have meetings like this, I can do it anywhere. I don't need to be in the building. But the value of being in a building that provides you with exactly what you need to be as happy, healthy, and productive as possible, and provides this level of if you like this is like the AI version of a water cooler. Yeah, we're going to try and get people. We're going to try and nudge people to meet each other, and that's what a Maven type person does. They're really good. They're connectors. So can our builders be connectors of people? So
I completely agree. And what's so interesting is, so our research team, one of the researches that they're working a lot on is neurodiversity and how diverse individuals are from each other. And the hypothesis and the argument is actually that we're all on the spectrum of neurodiverse. We're just neurodiverse in a different way. And we believe that AI is actually going to give us that opportunity to drill down into that individual level and see what, even from a biology perspective of, how they sleep and what are their patterns and what are their energy levels and are they introvert, are they extrovert, and then give them spaces that make sense for them in that moment that you were just describing, all of those different parameters. And AI gives you that computing ability to actually come up with the reasoning behind it, which I don't think we had before. But let's dive into it, because I want to.
It's very deep, isn't it? If you think about it, that's a real step change in capabilities. We might have talked about things like this a number of years ago, but it was fantasy land. There was no way we could do it. But now you genuinely can take things to that sort of level, and the quality of experience that we'll be able to deliver is a step change. We're not getting this is not a little bit better. This is a real step change.
Yeah, and I think we need to start, as we dive into this, for our audience, kind of breaking it down into digestible pieces, right? Because I think what we just sketched was an amazing thing, and it's not far from where we are today. We're already getting into this space, which I just think is so exciting. But let's break down AI to begin with. What are the different types of AI, and how should people be thinking about each of these types?
Okay, this is very, very important, because the real estate industry, not alone, but particularly, tends to just dump AI. All AI is in the same basket. But really, you've got to think of AI as having two major modes. One is analytical and one is creative. So there's analytical AI, which machine learning and still exists now. And what I was talking about in 2017, and people were talking about for decades before that, is predictive and it's deterministic. It's like having a smart analyst. So it looks at structured data from the past to forecast outcomes or optimize decisions. And you'd use it to predict tenant churn, fine tune your HVAC system, model cash flows, that sort of thing. And then there's generative AI, which has really jumped onto the scene since November the 30th, 2022, when ChatGPT came out. But actually, it all started with a paper written by a number of people at Google called "Attention is All You Need" in 2017. And that was the foundational algorithmic breakthrough that has enabled this new technology. So it took a number of years to really get going, but only 5 years. But generative AI is much more creative and it's probabilistic as opposed to deterministic. So it's, rather than being your smart analyst, it's more like a brainstorming partner. So it learns patterns from unstructured data, so from language, images, code, and then creates something new. It generates something new. So marketing copy, event ideas, concept designs, floor plans, lease summaries, all that sort of thing. Now, both are statistical and both are trained on data, but their outputs and how we use them are fundamentally different. So analytical AI is about predict, cluster, classify. Generative AI is about create, synthesize, innovate. So they're two different tools to be played with that mostly you'll want to use together, but you just need to realize one is more creative and one is more analytical. I mean, people talk about generative AI sometimes hallucinates, doesn't always tell you 100 things that are 100% true. That, though, is a creative thing. How does it help you think through a new strategy? How does it help you think through an event program for your building, unless it can create things out of nothing? So you really need to think of it and use it like this brainstorming partner that you can have with you at all times. So yeah, there's the two big different types.
And when we look at real estate, right, we've had many conversations about how real estate is a little bit slow and conservative in its adoption. And I find that people, think that the only way to apply AI to real estate is through the building data and, to be able to, measure the air quality better and predict and these types of things. But where are we right now when it comes to AI in real estate? And what are some of the value cases that you're seeing with your communities?
Well, it's very interesting when you look at this, that there is a tendency to try and think of use cases that are strictly real estate related, as opposed to business related. So everyone fixate about, here's a real estate problem. Does it solve that? And thinks less about how can this help me run my business. Essentially, if you think of it like this, anything to do with text, anything to do with code, and anything to do with imagery is absolutely bullseye for AI. So wherever you're dealing with lots of images, or you're looking to write software code, or you're dealing with text, generative AI is the perfect tool. You absolutely will be able to apply generative AI to anything that deals with any of those three. And then you think about, well, what is real estate? It's almost the most paper heavy, second to legal, is probably as paper heavy as any industry, or in terms of text. So obviously you're seeing lots of stuff being done about lease abstractions, or summarizing research, or um, requests for information, and all the anything that involves creating text, or synthesizing text, or summarizing text, is exactly where you should be using generative AI. So just one of the things we do on my course, I run this generative AI for real estate people course, is we take an individual's workflow and we break it down into goals, tasks, and subtasks. So anyone can do this. You take your job, you think, well, what are the goals of my job? What are my responsibilities? And you might say, well, I've got 3 goals. There's 3 big things I have to do, are the basis of my job. Each of those requires a certain number of tasks. So I've got 3 goals and I might have 15 tasks. Each of those tasks then probably breaks down into subtasks. In order to fulfill that task, there's 5 other things. So you go from 1 job, 3 roles, 15 goals, any number of tasks, and then subtasks. What we do then is that we then create a mind map out of that, when you can very easily see at the end of it your great big list of subtasks, and you can literally go through it saying, automate that, automate that, automate that, automate that. That one, it can help me do that, it can help me do that, it can help me do that, it can help me do that. And these last 3, no, I have to do 100% of that myself. So everybody, everybody and every job is going to be unbundled and then rebundled. So most jobs are not going to go. Some jobs are going to go. Most jobs are not going to go. But every job is going to get reconfigured, because there's lots of stuff we do, and you only have to sit on social, sit on LinkedIn, and listen to the number of people moaning about how much time they have to spend doing X, Y, Z, which doesn't have a lot of value. And you think, automate, automate, automate. We've got to get rid of all this stuff, and we need to concentrate on the good stuff. So, as I say, within real estate tasks, you can break it down like that, but fundamentally, language, code, images. So text, code, and images. But then there's also the thing of, we're running businesses here. So, and our businesses are not only about real estate. They're about marketing, they're about HR, they're about operations, they're about sales, and they're about R&D and that sort of stuff. We all have to do this. All businesses have all these tasks, all these functions that they have to do, and then they add their speciality on top of that. And of course, generative AI can be applied to all of those. 70% of all the tasks that are relevant that are most amenable to generative AI are within sales and marketing, customer operations, software, and R&D. But anything in those areas, there's probably a lot of applications that you can use it. So I never like to be too specific, or do this, do that, because you have to think more broadly. What is it I do? What is this technology good at? And then think, in that case, can I automate it? Do I need to do it myself, or does it enable me to work with it to do it faster, quicker, cheaper, better, or whatever?
I like it. I mean, one of the things that we do in our company is we do calendar audits, right? Where we need to look at what is taking up our time, what are the tasks that are adding the most value, that are the most high cost as well, meaning that it is your specific knowledge or your specific capability that needs to do that task, and what are the elements that are either high cost but kind of automatable, or low cost that we should just give to somebody else to do. Because I think what people tend to do often is they say, oh, I'm so busy doing my piece that I need somebody to do this piece, and they actually outsource the very thing that they like to do the most to somebody else. So I think the combination of what you're talking about with what I'm talking about, where you can use AI to just accelerate each of those pieces of work, makes a ton of sense. And the way I see it is that you then are looking kind of back at how to make things more efficient, how to make things in a lot of ways better, in some ways when you use AI. But I don't know if it accounts yet for the innovation, right? Like, how do you use it to move the needle and show new value cases or new things to do with your business? Because I think, the ROI think tank work that we were doing, we had this idea of basic math, right? Where if you focus on this one piece, you can calculate the ROI. But the real power of smart and technology is when you start to add more value cases for each kind of individual thing, and then you start to get these kind of exponential ROIs in a way. So how do you advise companies to think about that innovation and that innovation iteration with AI?
It's a very good point, and it's something of a hobby horse of mine. That what we really need to be focusing on is not AIing the past in the same way as we used to focus on don't digitize the past. With this unbundling and rebundling and working out what you can automate, what should be augmented, and what you should do yourself, are the foundations for working out what does this enable me to do now, or what does this enable my team, or what does this enable my company to do now that we couldn't do before. And that's the innovation side of it. Almost, I think actually almost all your attention should be focused on where do we create new value? Because a lot of value is going to be either destroyed or it's going to be commoditized. So once there's something that used to be a big deal and it just becomes table stakes, obviously all the value goes. So I mean, just as an example, lease abstraction. There's a lot of money made in looking after leases because it was such an incredibly inefficient process. But it'll all be done in seconds now, and the value sort of goes. Has to be done, but the value moves as a lot of things get automated. They become commoditized, so that loses the value. So you really need to be thinking, what parts of my business are going to gain value and what parts of my business are going to lose value. So say your business does 10 different things, has 10 different income streams. By the time you've done this unbundling and rebundling, and I like the way of doing it with your calendar, because your calendar is reality, isn't it? It's actuality. Mm-hmm. If it's in the calendar, it's something you have to do. So that's a really good way of looking at how many things take up how many hours per week. But once you can get rid of those, you then need to be thinking, if I can do that, everyone's going to do that. So that we used to earn quite a lot of money doing that because it took quite a long time, and now it takes 2 minutes. I mean, our problem is not as big as the lawyers' problems, because the lawyers, charge every 6 minutes, and or the professional services firm charge by the hour. Well, how do you charge by the hour to do due diligence when it takes you 2 hours 30 instead of 2 months? You're not going to be able to do it. And then you listen to and read about all that's going on in the professional services companies, and there's this big fundamental thing of charging by the hour is the past. How are we going to make money going forward? So you've got to look at those areas, but then at the same time, you look at areas where you can create what's known as AI synergy. There was a big study done by MIT just at the end of last year, where they took 106 studies of human plus machine. How are people working with AI? So they did a meta study of all these other studies, and what they found was there's really two types of way that humans and machines work together. There's AI augmentation, where you use an AI to help you. Yes, there's the automation, but put that to one side. There's augmentation, which can help you do things better, faster, cheaper, but they're not better than the best person in the world could do them today. Now, you might not be able to afford the best person in the world to do them today, so it still acts as value. But just intrinsically, 2 + 2 still equals 4. I'm just doing it quicker. But they show there's a certain categories of task where working with the machine enables 2 + 2 to equal 5, enables you together to create something that's better than either the AI could create on its own or the human could create on its own. And again, on the course, we actually have a custom GPT for trying to work out within your business what potential areas are there where there's synergies. So because ultimately the value, anything that can be done by the machines will be done by the machines. So where does the human add the most value? And that's going to become quite a complicated thing to think about as we go on. But you'll probably be able to work it out. But you need to really think at this on this. What does this enable, rather than spending all your thinking on, well, how do we just make this more productive and faster? Because that stuff's not really worth that much. Anyway, Carl Benedict Frey, who's a professor at Oxford, who writes a lot about the future of work, actually has an article in the FT today arguing that a focus on productivity and a focus on productivity is not actually how AI is going to boost productivity, because it's just digitizing the past. And as you say, we've got to think about where's the value go when all of this stuff happens. Well, and you know, I'm not saying this is easy. This is complicated, but unless you dive down deeply into it, and particularly, you know, we were talking about this earlier, this idea of mixed talent teams. You know, diversity of thought. You need people from different parts of the company, and you need the most senior people, you need most junior people, and you need people from all the different sectors. And then you have to work on this system of, well, what can we do? So,
well, and I think, you know, that's where we try and put one brushstroke over all people and all roles. And, you know, back to office is a perfect example of where we say, you know, everybody all needs to come back, or everybody all needs to stay at home, whatever. And it's really quite interesting, because we're all individuals and each one of these roles is unique, and some roles will be affected more than other roles, and some individuals and those neurodiverse, you know, ways of being is going to play more easily with AI than others, and careers and individuals. But where should people be worried about this, and where do we tread with caution, or can we even tread with caution? Do we even have the power to tread with caution? What is your view when it comes to kind of the fears around AI and how quickly this is all going?
my attitude to this, and it's something I go on about on the course a lot, and I always tell everyone I can, that I think people who really lean into AI today, so who become competent and capable with the major AI tools. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to know how to code. You just need to, frankly, pick one of the frontier models. So pick Gemini, pick GPT, pick Claude, which are the three big frontier models. So the most advanced models, and become really expert in one of those, and use those for 1,000 hours. Use those, every single thing you do. Think, oh, well, I'll ask GPT, or I wonder if Claude can help me with that. And so you get a real feel for what they can do, what they can't do. But if you just leave, and all the other things, all the other tools and technologies, actually sort of flow from that. If you're a really good Gemini or GPT user, you can pick up any other tool. So there's a million specialist tools, but there's the three at the cutting edge. If you're really good with that, but I believe if you lean into those really strongly and really start applying that to your own yourself, your own job, and then your team, and then hopefully your company, I think you've got 2 years to create some massive competitive advantage, because the bulk of business, and it's not just real estate, the bulk of business isn't doing very much. You know, if you look at the latest survey that Deloitte, I think it was Deloitte, did a week ago, had it that about 6% of people use an AI tool daily. It's about 20% use it weekly. But as far as I'm concerned, you're not leaning in unless you're using it daily. So you're still single digits of people who are really pushing what we can do. So I think my fundamental thesis is that what we are going to see is the emergence of a lot of new companies who are fast, agile, hyper productive super teams. And you're already seeing this in the tech sector. There's a site you can go to which lists all these companies that have a small number of employees, 10, 50 employees, and they're pulling in millions. I mean, there's companies like Cursor, which have got, I think, 18 staff or something. It's got 100 million coming in. This is happening in tech already, because you've got this amazing flywheel. But it's going to apply across the board. So there's going to be these new agile, fast, hyper-productive super teams who will take a real estate function and think, how can we transform that? And they will come out with something and start a new business. There was an example of this is who's it funded by? It was announced a few weeks ago. There's a company funded, I can't remember, by quite a well-known fund, 300 million in funding, set up by one of the women who applied to be PwC UK boss but didn't get it, and an ex-chairman, I think, of EY. And they're setting up basically an AI PwC. They're not doing audit, but they're going to lean into all the technologies to enable them to provide the same services faster and quicker with a different business model. So it's not going to be per hour. It's probably going to be based on output. So you've got them in that sector. You see them in tech. You're going to see the same thing in real estate. I did where you had one of my case study companies on the course, company based in just outside Boston called APERS, set up by a couple of super smart people from MIT and Harvard, who are using AI to create investment modeling. So they're doing AI underwriting, and it's incredibly disruptive. And talking to them and walking through how they're reinventing how you would go about underwriting a building, or how you would go about creating an investment memo for your investment committee, chalk and cheese. Now, they're going to find it hard to get going, because one of the people who was on the call, who actually worked for one of these companies, said, oh, it's brilliant, it's absolutely great. But if one of them came in and tried to sell it into our company, you can guarantee they'd be pushed out pretty quickly, because they're so disruptive. But what they're much more likely to do, so they won't try and target the incumbents, they will target new firms, or they will set up and do it themselves. So they might go and raise X hundred. There's so much money out there. Really, really, really good ideas, particularly in America, can raise huge amounts of money. So you're either going to get companies that set up saying, well, I'm not going to try and put JLL's X division out of business, but I'll compete with them. Or I'll help their small competitor offer JLL quality services, and it'll be faster, quicker, cheaper.
It's going to
etc.
be
So
interesting, that's for sure. Sam
yeah,
Altman talked about how we will see our first billion-dollar companies produced by one person, and I think that that's crazy because yeah, you've got the tool set to be able to do, incredible computation and service on a massive scale. So I think it's really, really interesting. This has
sorry.
been,
Can I
yeah, go
can I
ahead.
just jump in there because when we talk like this, it does tend to freak people out a bit because you suddenly think, oh my god, everyone's ruined apart from these people. But I mean that is the great opportunity. But there's a fundamental societal thing that we need to think about with all of this. 100% guaranteed for a particular quantum of output, you will need less people to do it. So we have to build a bigger pie. So if you just think in uh, lump of labor terms about this, then that's the wrong way of thinking. We have to think everything has got to be better. So I think about it in I was talking to someone who was a lawyer about this, and I said, look, there's very few people in the world who can afford you. You're really, really expensive. So basically, you've got to be a multi-millionaire or quite a big company to afford you. But there's thousands, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of people who could do with being able to talk to someone like you. And so we need to be able to service those people. So
Well,
building a bigger pie is super important.
what you see is those experts at that level, they're now creating GPTs so more people can access them, and that's how they're monetizing the difference. And I think that that's a really, positive, nice way to look at it as well. This has been amazing, and I think we'll have to reconvene a year from now to see how far we have come and what's changed and where we're going. Both on the smart building certification as a fantastic tool to check where you are smart ready and to measure your value add, but also the work that you're doing. Before we go, I'd love for everybody to get an understanding about your course and how to get in touch with you and where to get involved. I would love to see. We're planning on joining the next cohort in July, and I'd love to see a lot of the Smart Building Collective there, because then we can do a lot of this innovation together. So often we'll come into a training or a course and we'll work in silo and then go away and do our own thing with it. Well, why don't we try and collectively innovate and work together on this such an important topic? So yeah, where can we go to see your course, and maybe just give us a little bit of view of what that course looks like?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Nicholas. And yeah, and you make the important point that one of the strong things about the course is building this network of people who are the forward thinking people, the progressive people, people who are trying to pull the future closer. But the generative AI for AI course, you can get to it by going to antonyslumbers.com, no H in Anthony, antonyslumbers.com, and then it's just click on course. But essentially, it's a 3 week course for practitioners. It's for anybody working in real estate. So I've had a lot of CEOs that have done it. I've had a lot of investors. I've had a lot of property managers. I've had a lot of workplace people. Had a lots of across the board. But it's not a technical course. We're not teaching writing AI here. It's fundamentally what are the tools you need, how to use them, and how this is likely to impact on the real estate industry as an industry, and then how is it likely to impact on the demand for real estate. How is the demand for, so it's an AI for business course through a real estate lens. So, for instance, one of the strongest parts of the course is we have this 20 prompt libraries. So we have 20 different types of prompt, which are getting increasingly powerful over the last few months. What you can actually do, but for every one, we give a real estate example for it. So you would come out of it with a strong understanding of what generative AI is, a strong understanding of how it's likely to impact our industry, how it's likely to change demand, but most importantly, how do I use this stuff, and what do I use, and what can I do with it, and how do I apply this right away to my business. So antonyslumbers.com, the next cohort, the first live session, so we have 3 2-hour live sessions, is on 4th of July, and I'd love to see anyone who can come.
And we'll put that link in the bio and in the comments. So definitely, and get in touch if you need to find Antony, if you can't find him, but he's pretty easy to find. So Antony, thank you so much for this and this discussion. It's always inspiring talking to you and learning about all the latest and greatest. And you know, as we say, that the real estate as a service is a battle won. I don't know what the battle is in this, but I think just living better, healthier, and doing the work that you want to do. I think that's the coolest opportunity of it all, is getting rid of the things that you don't enjoy and the things you don't want, and do more of what you do enjoy. So I think that's the biggest goal.
Absolutely. Build a better built environment. That's what we want to do.
Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you for having me.